Öyle mi? Öyle mi? Duyuluyor herhalde. Ha, mükemmel. Çok teşekkür ederim. Mükemmel. Başlayabilir miyiz? Bayan Kuçuradi'yi bekliyoruz galiba.
Asansörle geliyordu aslında.
Tamam. Okay. We have some few minutes. Okay. Sie werden mir Ihre Anschrift schicken. Ne?
Ich habe das schon gemacht.
Sie haben es schon gemacht. Sehr gut. Das war eine Anfang, eine Friendship.
Genau.
Hm? Sehr gut. Deutsche Sprache ist eine philosophische Sprache.
Die Deutschen sind keine Philosophen mehr.
Ah. Das war eine Gewohnheit in Frankreich. Wissen Sie, alle die Philosophen eine 3 oder 4 Monate in Deutschland muss.
Ja. Ah ja?
Zum Beispiel, ich habe meine Hauptthema Aaron. Nachher hat auch 3 Jahre hepinize güzel bir öğleden sonrası dileyerek ve çok değerli hocamız Profesör Kuçuradi'yi ve diğer değerli katılımcıları saygıyla selamlayarak öğleden sonramızın ilk toplantısını başlamak istiyoruz. Ben Büyükelçi Profesör Doktor Ali Engin Oba, Çağ Üniversitesi öğretim üyesiyim. Aynı zamanda İstanbul Üniversitesi Edebiyat Fakültesi'nde felsefe doktorası da yaptım. Bir düşünür, bir diplomat ve bir felsefe alanına büyük ilgi duyan felsefe kurumu üyesi sıfatıyla aydın bir Türk olarak bugün sizle esas bu bölümün ana teması barış ve savaş üzerinde duracağız. It is my great pleasure to chair this session, gentlemen. And this is a pleasure because we will be 3 speakers with the chairperson. We will have the chance after our presentation to have a question-answer session also. Ladies and gentlemen, before starting, I will have the privilege to present the 3 speakers. I will then start with dear Professor McBride. He is Arthur. He is the Arthur G. Hansen Distinguished Professor Emeritus of Philosophy, Purdue University. He is past president of the International Federation of Philosophical Societies and the North American Society for Social Philosophy, and was a co-founder and first president of the North American Thought Society. He has published some 19 written or edited books and over 225 articles, especially including works on Marx and on Sartre, and more generally in social and political philosophy. It is a great honor to have you here, dear Professor. Then I will have the privilege also to give the CV of Signor Professor Luca Maria Scarantino. Molto piacere, signor. Luca Maria Scarantino is a professor of moral and intercultural philosophy at the Department of Humanities, Aldo Moro University of Bari, Italy. He has authored over 150 scholarly papers with focus on the moral and epistemic conditions that would foster intercultural approaches to philosophy. He has served as a Secretary General of FIASP from 2008 to 2018 and as President from 2018. He recently presided over the 25th World Congress of Philosophy in Rome. Most welcome, and this is an honor to have you here. Herr Professor Klaus Leisinger is a founder and president of the Global Values Alliance Foundation. He does research and teaches on business ethics and corporate responsibility at various universities and in consulting engagements. He served as special advisor on the Global Compact to UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, and subsequently to the Global Compact as special advisor on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Business Ethics. Among others, Klaus Leisinger is part of a consortium doing an ethical research from program financed by the European Commission, Horizon Videra 2021, Era 01. Since its creation in 2012, he is a member of the Leadership Council of the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, initiated by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and led by Jeffrey Sachs. He is a member of the steering committee of the program and Fraternal Economy and Integral and Sustainable Development associated with the Pontifical Academy of Social Science. He also participated in the Ethics in Action initiative associated with the Pontifical Academy of Science. Until 2013, he was a member of the senior management of Novartis and served as president and CEO of the former Novartis Foundation for Sustainable Development. Based on his theoretical background as social scientist and his practical management experience, he endeavors to enable efforts were recognized by honorary doctorates in theology, University of Freiburg, Switzerland, and philosophy, University of Central Lancaster, England. Klaus Leisinger also serves on the High Committee of Elders of Mohammed VI Polytechnic University in Benguerir, Morocco. Herr Professor, herzlich willkommen. Das ist eine Ehre für uns, dass Sie sind hier. Vielen Dank.
Dankeschön.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the chance to be able to listen three prominent philosophers dealing with interesting questions. War, then the questions of the multipolar world, then the corporate responsibility in difficult times. We are indeed in a difficult time. I will quote some phrases to express the world in which we are living. Our world is becoming unhinged. Geopolitical tensions are rising. Global challenges are mounting. And we seem incapable of coming together to respond. We confront a host of existential threats, from the climate crisis to disruptive technologies, and we do so at a time of chaotic transition. For much of the Cold War, international relations were largely seen through the prism of two superpowers. Then came a short period of unipolarity. Now we are rapidly moving toward a multipolar world. This is in many ways positive. It brings new opportunities for justice and balance in international relations. But multipolarity alone cannot guarantee peace. At the beginning of 20th century, Europe had numerous powers. It was truly multipolar, but it lacked robust multilateral institution, and the result was World War I. A multipolar world needs strong and effective multilateral institutions, yet global governance is stuck in time. Look no further than the United Nations Security Council and the Bretton Woods systems. They reflect the political and economic realities of 1945, when many countries are still under colonial domination in 1945, I mean. The world has changed. Our institutions have not. We cannot effectively address problems as they are if institutions do not reflect the world as it is. Instead of solving problems, they risk becoming part of the problems. And indeed, divides are deepening. Divides among economic and military powers. Divide between North and South, East and West. We are inching ever closer to a great fracture in economic and financial system and trade relations, one that threatens a single open internet with diverging strategies on technology and artificial intelligence and potentially clashing security framework. In a high time to renew multilateral institutions based on 21st century economic and political realities, rooted in equality, solidarity, and universality, and anchored in the principles of United Nations Charter and international law. This means reforming the Security Council in line with the world of today. It means redesigning the international financial architecture so that it becomes truly universal and serves as a global safety net for developing countries in trouble. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in front of a world with difficulties, problems, and crises. The war has returned. As philosophers, we are in a position to think what should be done. I think here we are in this session, and our aim is to think about the peace. Now, it is a pleasure to give the floor to Professor Dr. William L. McBride, who will speak on philosophy and war.
Thank you very much, Professor Oba. For I dipped into the future, far as human eye could see, saw the vision of the world and all the wonder that would be. saw the heavens fill with commerce, argosies of magic sails, pilots of the purple twilight, dropping down with costly bales, heard the heavens fill with shouting, and there rained a ghastly dew from the nation's airy navies, grappling in the central blue. Far along the worldwide whisper of the south wind rushing warm with the standards of the peoples plunging through the thunderstorm, till the war drum throbbed no longer and the battle flags were furled in the Parliament of Man, the Federation of the World. Some of you may know that's from Alfred Lord Tennyson, a poem called Locksley Hall. It's with great pleasure that I salute the Turkish Philosophical Society on its 50th anniversary. These 50 years have included, among many things, the extremely prominent role of one of its members, Ioana Kucherati, as leader over a number of years of the world's International Philosophical Society, FISP, and the World Congress of Philosophy in Istanbul in 2003. Your society also figured prominently in the growth and development of the International Philosophy Olympiad, which continues to grow year by year. In 2003, we were still in some ways heralding the start not only of a new century, but of a new millennium. Having been chosen at that Congress to serve as the Secretary General of FISP for the next 5 years, I recall giving a talk in which I emphasized the idea of a worldwide community of philosophers, approaching fundamental questions, yes, from diverse points of view, but united in a commitment to community that would go beyond our profession to influence the world as a whole. Today, in fall 2024, how does the achievement of that purpose look? The only realistic answer to that question is not too good. Our planet is racked with wars and threats of wars, as Professor Oba mentioned, the two most prominent of which, at least for now, are taking place not very far from us here. In war, community ends. It seemed to me that a brief survey of what some Western philosophers have had to say about war might be in order, followed by a kind of critique. To put it quite simply, most Western philosophers have taken war for granted, though usually with some reservations. War, for them, seems to be as fundamental a phenomenon of human life as food or sleep or death. Plato in the Republic explains the origins of war in the desires of the people of one territory to acquire at least some of their neighbor's territory. Although he seems not to have any qualms about Greeks warring on non-Greeks, barbarians, he has a different, more anti-war attitude when it comes to civil war among the Greeks. Aristotle regards war as a kind of hunting, an occupation requiring certain skills, especially in leaders. But unlike Machiavelli many centuries later, Aristotle cautions against rulers cultivating military skills at the expense of other aspects of good leadership. Aquinas, whose medieval society was awash with wars, famously formulated rules to be followed for a war to be just. Locke defended wars of revolution in words that were used later in the American Declaration of Independence. Friedrich Engels, Marx's close colleague, who had actually served in the military early in his life, also took warfare for granted. But the 19th century philosopher who serves most clearly to justify warfare, but also to warn readers about its future, is Hegel. In his philosophy of right, he says that war is the medium whereby the power of nations is put into question, a great leveler in some ways, but apparently in some sense indispensable for the contradiction-filled but inevitable progress of world history. The warning is that mechanization was becoming more dominant in modern warfare, even in the early 19th century, it would seem, so that the human element of warfare, heroism and all that, was diminishing. One of the achievements, if that's what it's to be called, of Western thinking about warfare is the development of rules that placed limits on what is morally permissible. In the Middle Ages, there were required periods of truce, for example. The single most important piece of Western thinking on the topic is, of course, Hugo Grotius' De Jure Belli Pacis, which establishes a sharp division between the vicious and grotesque practices of warfare as it was so often known, and the appropriate restraints, such as in the treatment of civilians and of prisoners, that he claims ought to prevail. But what have been the contributions of philosophers to thinking about the opposite of war, namely peace? In ordinary language, peace plays a very prominent role, particularly in the hope for a blessed and restful afterlife. In the Western cemeteries, the inscription RIP, or Requiescat in Pace, may he or she rest in peace, is commonplace, and the German word for cemetery is Friedhof, or place of peace. But these usages only serve, in a sense, to highlight the perceived unpeacefulness of daily life. Among philosophers, the one with whom I am familiar who meditated most deeply on the possibility of all-pervasive peace is St. Augustine, whose own times featured the gradual dissolution of the bellicose Roman Empire by the so-called barbarians. On the whole, however, Western philosophers continued, as I have said, to take for granted the practice of warfare as an ineliminable feature of human life. Kant's perpetual peace is one exception, although even its vision is somewhat limited. The time has come, I propose, for philosophy, in accordance with the spirit of community to which I appealed in 2003, to make a radical break with past assumptions about the inevitability of warfare, in the hope that the world at large may come to agree with the necessity of this break. To put this as simply and straightforwardly as possible, both the ideal and the reality of being human must no longer include the capacity for waging war. This is of far greater importance, I contend, than the elimination of class struggle, which, as the name implies, is itself a kind of warfare. The radicality of this proposal cannot be overestimated. An entire literature could be generated around various philosophical difficulties that it presents. For example, does the elimination of warrior traits from the human race entail the elimination of all violence? Is it not the case, as Merleau-Ponty said, that it is not a choice between purity and violence, but between different sorts of violence? Or will we need to suppress anger itself, even the justifiable anger of which Aristotle speaks? But consider the alternative. Consider the alternative. Today, the mechanized forms of warfare have advanced to the point that the only role left for humans to play in them is twofold: A, to trigger these forms, and B, to be killed by them. A very simple but stark example of what I mean here is the Israeli exploit of triggering the simultaneous explosions of hundreds of pagers and telephones. And while I claim no special scientific or technological expertise, it seems to me improbable that we need wait very long before advances in artificial intelligence result in self-triggering mechanisms that no longer require human intervention to initiate individual processes of destruction. Of course, the origins of this development would be human beings, would have been human beings, but they would no longer be needed, just as we no longer need the evolution of our, the intervention of our evolutionary animal ancestors to generate new lives, new human lives. The ultimate outcome of this sequence of events would be Menschen Dämmerung, the human world at its twilight, but without any Wagner to romanticize it as it closed its eyes for the last time, just as lacking in any purpose, any telos, as those various forms of intelligent entities that probably existed, I suspect, on more than one planet on distant galaxies in the past, and that, as in the scenario that I have just painted, self-destructed just as completely as we may. There is work to be done, philosophical work, on the joyous occasion of the 50th anniversary of the Turkish Philosophical Society. Let us dedicate ourselves to the advocacy of a world of peace, with a radically restructured image of our proud but fragile species. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to give the floor to Professor Luca Maria Scarantino. He will deliver a paper on role and task of philosophers in a multiple world.
That's your line.
No, you can speak here.
Thank you.